So this is the EAPA, Elder Abuse Prevention and Awareness Program Orientation, presented by the Department of on Aging, and also Dick Harmon is also here. He's with the Area Agencies on Aging, NEI3A, the data administrator. And we're going through the Elder Abuse Prevention Awareness Program. The way that the manual is constructed is it has everything that is included is from the Older Americans Act, the Iowa Code, the Administrative Code, and also the Department on Aging's reporting manual. The manual is set up so that it has sections in here where it breaks out when we have information that needs to be entered into the SAMS database. And at that point, we'll switch over the presenters from me, Linda Hildreth, to Dick Harmon so that he can explain that procedure. So a little bit of the history to talk about the program, how it got started, and the intent of the program. In fiscal year 2000, the Department on Aging staff reviewed all the research that had been done for many years on adult abuse, including dependent adult abuse and elder abuse, looked at reports and information that was generated from the dependent adult abuse forums that were held across the state in succession of several different time frames. They were about 3 years apart, to track of how we were doing on this adult abuse system, and still where were some of the sticking points, where were the barriers, and what needed to happen in order to help protect adults, older adults. Out of those conversations and discussions emerged the Elder Abuse Initiative legislation, and funding was appropriated in fiscal year 2001. That was the first time in Iowa State legislature history where money was appropriated for elder abuse prevention and awareness, and at that time it was $255,000. Why the Elder Abuse Initiative was needed is there were elders who were basically falling through the cracks, if you will. They weren't fitting in any system. Iowa's system is very fractured. It currently is still very fractured, but not as bad as it was at that point in time. And what had happened is there was older individuals who did not meet all three criteria of the dependent adult abuse law, which is underneath the Department of Human Services. And so therefore, under authority, the Department of Human Services there was no protection for these individuals. They weren't able to serve them. It also provided options to elders to enhance their lifestyle choices. Basically, when we had with the EAI, we had it in 22 counties, and they were in, again, these demonstration projects. And what they were doing is they were reaching out to individuals to help them understand, here's some different choices that you have that you can make if you so choose. It starts where the individual is, and it definitely is person-centered in the sense of if there's something that they want to do to correct their situation or alleviate a little bit of the stressors and components of their situation, that they had options that they could choose from. And the elder rights specialist would help them navigate those types of questions. It also was needed because the focus, when law enforcement has their role, the Department of Human Services has their role, and EAI has their role. Law enforcement, of course, you're looking at criminal charges, and they were focusing on the perpetrator. The Department of Human Services, they were focused on the perpetrator and also a little bit on the victim. At that time, back then, they had absolutely no funding or services in place for people who suffered elder abuse type situations or dependent adult abuse situations. And then EAI, it focuses on the victim focused on the victim or the potential victim. So it was anybody who was experiencing abuse, neglect, or exploitation, or they were at risk of experiencing abuse, neglect, or exploitation. It also, we kind of talked about that, it presented the elders with options to enhance their lifestyle choices. Again, it's not me putting my value system on their lifestyle, but it just provides them the different options that are available in their community that they can choose from, whether they want to do it now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, what have you. But a lot of times it's just introducing them to the options so that they can get used to those ideas and they can choose them if that's their desire. It also needed because there was an increased need for public awareness on the elder abuse issues. It's not as bad as it used to be, but it still exists where people think elder abuse just is not an issue in Iowa because it's Iowa. And ideally, that's the state we want to get to, of where that is the occurrence. But as we know, that elder abuse is very prevalent, and it doesn't matter what state you live in. It also provided an avenue to respond to reported concerns of elders at risk of or experiencing abuse, neglect, or exploitation. We didn't want to, with the way that the dependent adult abuse law was set up, what we were finding is that it was a system that was conducive to basically telling people, well, I'm sorry, either you're not abused enough, making you completely dependent, so we can't assist you, or it's not the person, your person that is perpetrating on you is not your caregiver, so we can't help you. What we wanted is a whole continuum of no matter where they were at on that continuum, that they could access some services or some assistance. Elder Abuse Initiative clients are age 60 or older. They could be dependent or independent. Dependency has nothing to do with the clients and consumers that we help with this program or with that program. They could be at risk of abuse, neglect, or exploitation, or actually experiencing it. And they also do not live in licensed healthcare facilities. The Elder Abuse Initiative data that from these demonstration projects, ran for 10 years. It was in 22 of the 99 counties. And as you can see, there was close to 12,000 total referrals. And keep in mind, 22 of Iowa's 99 counties. So, you multiply that out, that's a lot of referrals that would be out there statewide. 66% had mental health issues. Almost 45% were experiencing some type of financial exploitation. And about 31% were experiencing denial of critical care by an adult. We also found that only an estimated 16% of EAI clients fell into the category of dependent adult abuse. If you remember a couple of slides back, we were talking about, individuals falling through the cracks, and one of the purposes of the EAI demonstration projects was to show whether or not there was overlap between elder abuse and dependent adult abuse, if they would be duplicative systems. And what this data shows us is they are not duplicative. There is a bit of overlap, about 16%, but that means that 84% are elder abuse of the elder abuse cases. If the EAI had not been in place, nothing would have occurred, and the people would not have had any type of intervention or resources or options presented to them. So there's plenty of room for both the dependent adult abuse law and also the Elder Abuse Prevention Awareness Program that we'll talk about here in a minute. It also showed that an estimated 1,291 clients that were already utilizing Medicaid, they were already on Medicaid before they even came into this program, were able to remain in their own homes due to intervention. So if you think about that too, if there would not have been that intervention, these individuals most likely would have ended up had to change their living situation into a long-term care facility. So if you look at the financial aspect of it, it would have been more costly, if you will, to the state of Iowa. It also demonstrated the need for expertise in aging issues to address the complexity of elder abuse. You can see there it was almost 4,800 client hours, contact hours. And again, that's just in 22 of the 99 counties. This was a series of firsts in Iowa history. First time funding was appropriated for elder abuse detection training and services. That was in 2001. It was the first time data was collected to evaluate the issue of elder abuse through those 10-year demonstration projects. It had the first Elder Abuse Summit, which was in 2011. And then House File 2387, that was the first time a task force was established to analyze the current situation and applicable laws that were related to elder abuse. And That happened in 2012, and then there was a follow-up task force in 2013, and then an agency report in 2014. So why should we care about elder abuse prevention and awareness? One, it's common, even in Iowa, 1 in 13 persons 60 plus reported abuse. That's about the same percentage or prevalence rate as a coronary heart disease. It's lethal. Victims are 3 times more likely to die. If you think about it, I mean, this is a very traumatic experience for anyone. It's even more traumatic for people who are frail or who are, older, and especially if it's, I shouldn't say especially, when you have financial exploitation added onto that, if their bank accounts are drained, they don't have time to make up that money. They don't have the ability to go back out and work and to restock their nest egg, if you will. So it's very traumatic. It's very emotional. And as you can see, it's lethal. It's expensive. Victims are 4 times more likely to go into a nursing home, and 9% of financial exploitation victims turn to Medicaid as a direct result of the exploitation. So basically, it is everybody's business. Again, I think a lot of times our Iowa nice thinks that, oh, that's the Joneses, that's the Smiths, that's the whoever. That's just how they function. And that may be how they function, but that doesn't mean that it's okay. And because this is Mickey Rooney, should never look like this. Mickey Rooney was financially exploited by his family, and basically when he passed, his bank accounts were empty. And this was Blossom Deering. She was a Des Moines resident who was neglected and financially exploited by the gentleman that was renting a room from her, living in her home, and ignoring her. She had fallen and could not get up out of a kneeling position on her floor, and she was left there for, I believe it was 3 or 4 days, until he walked by her going to work every day and coming home from work, and of course, leaving the property to do whatever he was doing, and did not help her. When he did finally call, paramedics came in, and they literally had to peel her off of the floor, and she did end up passing. So again, this is everybody's business, and it is an important issue, and nobody should have to live like this, period. These are news clippings from the headlines that have happened around this area, in the sense that this area, this state, and I think maybe 1 or 2, East Moline. She was charged of exploiting an elderly person. But again, it is prevalent, it is there, and there's proof of it. We just need to pay attention. So the EAPA program, this quote from Marie-Therese Conley, she was at the 2011 Senate Committee on Aging hearing. That's where Mickey Rooney also testified. And her statement of never has an issue that affected so many people received so little attention. I think that's pretty profound, and I think it's absolutely on target. And why that is, we probably could fill a whole room full of whys, but we need to do something about it. So out of the the Elder Abuse Initiative demonstration projects came the EAPA program. Those demonstration projects ended in fiscal year 2011. The EAPA program was legislated and went into effect the beginning of fiscal year 14. As you will notice, and we'll go over the overview here of the program, it's very, very similar to what the EAI program was, or demonstration projects were. Again, it focuses on the prevention, intervention, and reporting of elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation by presenting older Iowans with options to enhance their lifestyle choice. And it's either, again, it's those 4 factors: the prevention, intervention, detection, and reporting. This program definitely is not part of, we do not investigate. That is not the function of this program. So those are the 4 cornerstones there: the prevention, intervention, detection, and reporting. The authority comes from the Older Americans Act, Title VII, Chapter 3, the Iowa Code 231.56A, and Iowa Administrative Code 17, Chapter 15. And again, those are incorporated in the manual that you should have in front of you. So the objectives are to respond to reported concerns of older Iowans who are at risk of or experiencing abuse, neglect, or financial exploitation. Also to network and coordinate with community resources to respond to the needs of the targeted population. A lot of this program is getting out and connecting, networking, looking at all these different options of how we can combine our community resources in order to help individuals. Community providers, medical providers, emergency responders, law enforcement, DHS, your local Department of Public Health, ISU Extension, even a lot of people in their programs, they connect with, say, a lot of the high schools where they have, I can't think of the term now, but like the industrial course classes where they actually get out and do some type of constructions where they might be able to help fix a roof, or they might be able to help build a ramp, those kinds of things. Boy Scouts, and sometimes even in the military, the different military units will come out and help together to do some community service to help with situations. Also collaborate and be a resource for the case managers, physicians, law enforcement, county attorneys, DHS, domestic violence agencies, anyone that you can think of, basically. The elder rights specialists and are the ones that are the go-to people for this. And also locally increase public awareness on elder abuse issues. How it works, it's mirrored after the Elder Abuse Initiative demonstration project. It's a service delivery system that's created through the partnerships with local stakeholders that are listed there on your screen for you, and also that we just discussed. It's accessible through lifelong links, the Aging Disability Resource Centers, and also through the elder rights specialists or their designee and EAPA specialists. They contact the client to assess the situation, evaluate their needs, get some more details on what's going on, identify the potential or real risks of abuse, neglect, or exploitation, and then coordinate service deliveries. It gets a little confusing of the different roles that each profession plays. With law enforcement, they investigate alleged crimes. DHS, they conduct an evaluation to determine if the person is dependent. Here's the 3 criteria. If the person's dependent, if there is a caretaker committing abuse, neglect, or financial exploitation, and if there is an allegation of abuse as defined by their code section, which is 235B. Based on that information, DHS declares that the case is founded, unfounded, confirmed, or non-registered. With the EAPA program, they address the service delivery aspects of the clients, whether they're victims or potential victims, whether they're dependent or independent. Not all elder abuse cases are dependent adult abuse cases, and not all dependent adult abuse cases are elder abuse cases. So they are not synonymous. The graphic on the slide there kind of shows the interconnected relationships between dependent adult abuse, law enforcement, and the elder abuse prevention and awareness and other supports underneath there. But as you can see that the elder abuse prevention and awareness is much broader than what law enforcement, their role, and a lot broader than the dependent adult abuse. Just to clarify again, and one of the reasons that we really hit this hard, if you will, in this section, the difference between elder abuse and dependent adult abuse is because there still is so much confusion, and they are used synonymously when in fact they are not. If you think back to the statistic that only 16% of the consumers would have fallen into the dependent adult abuse arena, it kind of exemplifies and makes the point here. And even if the elder that is a consumer that, a report is made to DHS and they're doing their dependent adult abuse investigation or evaluation, that does not stop what the EAPA program does for the individual. It's not a passover of, we're helping this individual and, reported I reported a case of dependent adult abuse to DHS. We still keep doing what we're doing with the individual. Our role is different than what the Department of Human Services is. So whether they accept or not a case of suspected dependent adult abuse, the Department of, the EAPA program still has a role and function of what it needs to do. So they should be carried on simultaneously. Just like if you make a referral to law enforcement because there's a suspected crime, there's still services and an intervention plan and our role that needs to be rolled out with that individual. So both of those entities at that time would just be working parallel. So EAPA staffing, I am on page 3 of your notebook, if you're the manual following along there. So the elder rights specialist, this is again lifted straight out of the Iowa Administrative Code, which is law. It states that the elder rights specialist shall be employed at a minimum of 1 full-time equivalent and shall administer the EAPA program and services and shall meet all of the following qualifications. They should have a bachelor's degree in human service field and a minimum of 4 years of experience in a human services and gerontology field. They should have the completion of the dependent adult abuse mandatory reporter training requirements in accordance with Iowa Code 235B 6.16 prior to direct client contact. That's the mandatory reporter training. They also need the completion of orientation and training provided by IDA, the Department on Aging, prior to direct client contact. That would be today's session that you're attending, related to utilization of the assessment tool, service coordination and monitoring, performance measures, outcome evaluation, advocacy and public awareness training, and 8 hours of annual training related to dependent adult or elder abuse. Now on letter D there, the 8 hours of annual training, that can be anything, again, that is not state sponsored. It can be anything related to adult abuse. You might attend a conference, you might attend a workshop, you might attend a couple webinars, what have you, but that's just 8 hours, again, on adult abuse. EAPA specialists, that's additional EAPA program staff that is utilized by the area agencies on aging or a subcontractor to provide services, and they shall meet all of the following qualifications. They need to have a minimum of 2 years of experience in the human services field. They need to have completion of the dependent adult abuse mandatory reporter training requirements in accordance with Iowa Code Section 235B.16 prior to direct client contact. And they also must have completion of the orientation and training provided by the department related to the utilization of the assessment tools, service coordination and monitoring, performance measures and outcome evaluation, advocacy and public awareness training prior to direct client contact. Client eligibility, again, this is very similar, or actually it's identical to when we had the demonstration projects. The person needs to be age 60 or older. They can be dependent or independent. They must be at risk of or experiencing abuse, neglect, or exploitation. It's the deprivation of the minimum food, shelter, clothing, supervision, physical care, mental health care, or other care necessary to maintain the older individual in an independent living arrangement. They cannot reside in a long-term care facility, but they could reside in an assisted living program. There is a screening tool that may be used. What you will notice is the forms that you have snippet shots of, and we'll see here that are in your manual. I'm on page 4 now, that are in your manual or, excuse me, on the PowerPoint here. Those also are 8.5 by 11 size in the manual that can be downloaded off of our website, and it is at the back. So, but we just wanted to make sure that this was included so that there's a visual, so that when we talk about the screening tool, actually gives you a picture of what it looks like. The purpose of it is to assist in the identification of individuals who are at risk of or who are experiencing abuse, neglect, or exploitation. These are questions that can be asked. It also helps you explore deeper. If the answer is yes, ask some more exploratory type questions. You can also work them into a conversation so that you're not sitting there with a checklist, just going down and saying, okay, question number 1, question number 2. These are just questions that you can have in your repertoire when you're talking with them in order to explore a little bit deeper. And approach is everything. Again, and you'll probably get more information out of someone if you do work them into conversation and it's kind of just a natural flow versus somebody, if you're sitting there asking them questions and doing check marks and such, that the latter generates more, could generate more of an anxious type situation. When it comes to referrals, I'm at the bottom of page 4 here. All referrals shall be accepted for individuals age 60 or older who are at risk of or experiencing abuse, neglect, or exploitation. Referral sources can come, you name it, I'm sure that the program has received it. Generally, they come from the community or family, neighbors, providers, other area agency on aging programs. They'll refer them over DHS, law enforcement. Again, there's been clergy that have made referrals. They can come from anywhere. Wherever elder abuse, neglect, or financial exploitation is suspected, a referral is to instantly be made to the EAPA county where the consumer lives. I cannot stress this enough. What we do not want to do is make the person tell their story over and over and over. Every time they have to retell it, it re-victimizes them. So it may be, when calls come in, and we'll talk about this here coming up on a flow chart, that it's just vitally important that whenever the referral comes in, if there's suspected elder abuse or they're talking about, things that lead the person that's answering the phone to believe that there potentially could be elder abuse, they need to refer it instantly over to the EAPA staff. So on your screen is the EAPA referral flow chart. It's also at the bottom of page 4. Just to walk through this, so when a call is coming in, let's just start to the far left. If it comes into the Iowa Department on Aging, if the person answering the phone suspects that there is elder abuse, if the answer is yes, then they refer it to the local elder rights specialist, directly to the local area agency on aging elder rights specialist. If they do not, if a call comes into the Iowa Department on Aging and elder abuse is not suspected, the referral is made to the Lifelong Links call center. So then I'm going to go clear to the far right. So if a call comes in directly to the local area agency on aging, if the person answering the phone, if they suspect that there's elder abuse, then, and the answer is yes, then they make the referral to their local elder rights specialist. If it comes through, backing up a little bit, if it comes through the local area agency on aging, and if there is not suspected elder abuse, then they continue with their internal process, they being the local area agency on aging that the call comes into. So when we go down the middle with the incoming call, it comes into Lifelong Link call center. The INR enter the demographic information into Harmony. If they suspect that there's elder abuse, the answer is yes. Then they complete the INR screening tool, including the EAPA referral section, and then they refer it to the local area agency on aging elder rights specialist. In a minute here, I'll turn this over to Dick and he will show you how this is entered into Harmony. So this is kind of the format of how this orientation will roll out, is that, again, I'll talk about the programmatic side, I'll review the flow chart, and then I turn it over to Dick and he walks through what it looks like and how it needs to be entered into Harmony. If we back up to the Lifelong Links call center, call comes in, INR enters the demographic information into Harmony. If they suspect there's elder abuse, if the answer is no, then they continue with the lifelong links process. So when we're determining the type of referral, after a referral is received, you need to determine the type of referral based on who is calling. And that's very important to figure out who is calling, because that's how the services are broken up underneath the EAPA program that we'll be discussing here in a little bit. If it's a non-consumer, the individual may or may not be a relative. It's just anybody who's calling about a consumer age 60 or older who is at risk of or is experiencing abuse, neglect, or exploitation. They're just calling about a concern about somebody else. The other type is if the consumer, the individual age 60 or older who is at risk of or is experiencing abuse, neglect, or exploitation, if they call in and they're calling in directly about themselves and they want to either gather information or some assistance and such. Or you might have a legal representative. That would be an individual who legally represents the client through mechanisms such as a guardianship, conservatorship, is the rep payee, is the agent for the financial power of attorney or for the healthcare power of attorney. They may be calling in. And if they're calling in before they actually can speak for or make these types of decisions for the consumer, the original documentation shall be provided to validate the relationship. And we'll get into that a little bit deeper here in a minute. So at this point, we are going to, I'm going to change Craig's presenters over to Dick so that he can talk about care enrollment into the EAPA program. So hang on just a second here.
Okay, so everyone should be seeing the Harmony screen, typical consumer client screen that you're used to seeing. It's in one shape or form or another. One of the things that will happen is typically if the process is followed, they're coming to you because they've already been either through lifelong links, as Linda said, or IDA is referring to you directly, or the local area agency has someone that had contact and referred them to you. So the first thing you need to do is find the consumer. So for example, we found client test. Then you need to enroll them correctly within the EAPA program. And the way to enroll them is there might already be an INR. They potentially could be an options count. They could be in a lot of other programs, but whatever point they've been referred to you, you need to make sure that in the care enrollment area, there's a care enrollment called EAPA referred, and typically that will be done ahead of time based on the internal processes. So for example, the INR person or someone within the agency would have already added a new enrollment called EAPA referred, and the level of care would be elder abuse and prevention. The service program would be EAPA referred. The care program defaults to EAPA referred. The application date and receive date you can leave alone because we'll just pretend this was referred today. The status will be EAPA referred. Then we want to know what was the reason for the referral. And it is possible that there might be numerous reasons, but you need to select the primary reason that this referral is being referred to an EAPA specialist or how you accepted it. So we'll just say, for example, this was financial exploitation. Okay. Then all you really need to do is make sure the start date is the date that these people were referred. I know it's come up where sometimes now you might just get a voice message from someone. Maybe I got a voice message yesterday from someone. Well, you still need to enter an EAPA referred referral care enrollment. Then the start date would have been yesterday if they left the message yesterday. But if it was today, we'll just say it's today. The start date is today, and then I just hit OK. And now I have an EAPA referred care enrollment. And this may or may not already be there. Most of the time it'll probably already be there for you. But if it isn't, the expectation that it is. So you might need to add this yourself based on how you got this referral, whether it was an email yesterday or an email today or whatever, there should be a date and a time care enrollment called EAPA referred. They will also add you as a care manager. And so they would have come in here and did add new and pick care manager. And then we'll just stick with milestones, and we'll just say their care manager is me, and may or may not be their primary care manager. That'll be an agency decision. And then the start date would be the date that I'm now involved. So let's just say today I got the referral and I'm involved today as well, which is the 8th. Okay. So then I hit OK, and now I'm listed as a care manager. Just a reminder, as you all know, if save is blue or save and close is blue, you need to do that or you haven't saved anything to this record yet. And I'm just going to hit save. And now, that ends the referral process. And typically then, you then would then get the referral, and when you look up the consumer, this would already be there, and your name may or may not already be here, but it should be. And then, depending on how your agency works, if this is done correctly, when you go to your dashboard, you would see this consumer in your dashboard as a referral that's been referred to you. Or maybe they would have done an email with the name and that and so forth. And when you look it up, this is already here. I just want you to understand that I've learned that sometimes the referral process is still a learning process, and they might still be emailing you right away. They might be leaving you a voicemail with a consumer name on it. The point is, when you then go find this person, you want to make sure this referral information is here and you're the care manager, because that may or may not have been done for you ahead of time. And then this would end the referral process.
Switching back over to me here for a minute. And getting the slides up to date. There we go. So, the Elder Abuse Prevention and Admission by the Elder Abuse Prevention and Awareness Program is kind of the umbrella, is the program. And then there are 4 services that are offered in this program. And I am in the middle of page 6 in your manual if you're following along there. Those 4 services are offered through this program, and they're defined in the Department on Aging Reporting Manual and are as follows. The 4 programs are the EAPA Non-Consumer Consultation Service, and we'll go into the definitions of these and such in a little bit more depth in a little bit. The EAPA Consumer Consultation Service, the EAPA Assessment and Intervention Service, and also the EAPA Training and Education Service. Dick is going to show you how to admit someone into the program momentarily.
So now, we're with the process that the enrollment or referral was made, care manager's been assigned, which is me or you in your case, and now you're going to start either deciding to make contact, do whatever you're going to do, but everything from this point forward means they're admitted into the EAPA program. And so your first step is to admit this person to the EAPA program. And when you come to care enrollments, depending on how many care enrollments there might be a show all or show current, depending on how many there are. So you want to make sure you show all, just to make sure that there might not already be a care enrollment of some type, or you're not seeing something you should. That might be an area you want to look at. Once you determine that I need to admit this person, okay, the first thing you're going to do is end the referral care enrollment, because now they're done being in the referred. So I'm open up the EAPA referral, and I'm going to put an end date. Simply going to put an end date which is the same date that I'm admitting. So let's just say today, this was done this morning, and now I'm back in the office this afternoon, and now I found this on my dashboard. Well, now I'm going to end this referral enrollment today and simply hit OK. And now I'm going to add a new care enrollment where the level of care is going to be elder abuse and prevention and awareness. The service program now, though, is going to be EAPA because now I'm admitted. Okay. And then the status is EAPA admitted because now I'm EAPA admitted into the program. And the reason would be whatever that reason might be, financial exploitation or whatever it might be. And then the start date would be today's date, and then I hit OK. And then I save this consumer, and now I'm admitted into the program. Yep.
So next we're going to look at the EAPA non-consumer consultation service. That's the first service that was identified just a couple of slides ago underneath the EAPA program. There we go. Couldn't get my clicker working. So the definition of the non-consumer consultation service, I am on page 8 of the manual. This definition is lifted straight out of the Department on Aging's reporting manual. And the definition states it's a service that is provided to a non-consumer through a one-on-one discussion that may occur in person, by phone, or electronically. And it results in an understanding of the older Iowans' problems and capabilities, linking the non-consumer to the available resources and services within their local community, and to the maximum extent practical, but there's a follow-up to ensure that the non-consumer receives the services he or she needs and is aware of the resources available. These inquiries may take several different forms. It may be an information-seeking inquiry for potential resources available that they can pursue on their own, and other possibilities that the caller would like the elder rights specialist or to come, or the EAPA specialist to come out and do, or to go out and do a welfare check. So basically, with a non-consumer consultation, and we'll get into that a little bit further here in the next couple slides, but it's people, again, if you think back to this is a continuum of services, and we want to make sure that we are meeting the person where they are at on this continuum. So a non-consumer calling in, they might be at a point of, you know what, I just need some information to know that I'm on the right track. There's places I've called, but is there anything else I'm not thinking of? So that might be one of the scenarios. Another scenario might be, you know what, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm very capable and I can help this individual I'm concerned about. Can you give me some information and ideas of what to do? Or it could be that, you know what, I'm really concerned about this person and it is beyond my capabilities and knowledge set, and I'm hoping that you guys can provide some help for me. So those are just like 3 different scenarios that could potentially occur here. And again, it's the non-consumer that's calling about somebody else. They have concerns for someone. Again, in the reporting manual, they provide example scenarios so that when you're recording it in SAMS, that again, Dick will go through here in a few minutes too, and also show you how to record it. But it gives you different examples of how to record this service of non-consumer consultation in the reporting manual. So that is included in there too. Again, that's still on page 8. The flow chart for this process is on page 9, and again, it's also in the attachment portion or appendix of the manual. We just like to have it in your manual too so that you can see it, but it's also pretty small. So if you need it 8.5 by 11 or would like to print it out and put it in your office so that it's readily available for reference, that's also an option there for you too. So starting out, I'm going to start and go across where it says start and has the referral received. I'm going to go across the top at first, and then we'll come back and walk through the rest of them. So referral is received. Next step is the caller, the consumer, or their legal representative. If the caller is not the consumer or their legal representative, then will the caller provide the name of the older adult or the consumer? If no, and again, I just want to pause here. This gets a little confusing and a little heady right now, but we will, as I go through the flow chart, we're going to talk about it, and Dick will also go through it again and show you how to record it in SAMS. So, okay, so if the person will not provide the caller's name of the older adults that they're calling about, then that is going to be entered into, the service that will be provided, I should say, is the training and education service. Keep in mind, you don't have a name there, but you are providing some type of education or training to that individual. You will enter that information into Harmony, and then you will select consultation. So that's the end of that one at the top. So if we go back to the referral received, is the caller the consumer or the legal representative? Answer is no. Will the caller provide the name of the older adult / consumer? If yes, so I'm on the second blue diamond and then going down, search Harmony to see if a consumer record exists. So is there a consumer record? If yes, then you go straight down, you open the consumer record, you make a copy of the most recent assessment, you enter EAPA information into Harmony, you then create a contact and enter new consumer's information, then you provide the new consumer the consultation service. After that's provided, is a decision made that they want you to contact the consumer? If no, then you select consultation under EAPA priority in Harmony, and then you'll enter the discharge information into Harmony. Now I'm going to back up a little bit just to the contact consumer on that lower level, that blue diamond. If you contact the consumer, the answer is yes. And as you can see, the arrow brings you up over to the left, and it says see EAPA consumer consultation process. So I want to back up to the, is there a consumer record? It's the blue diamond in the middle. So we did the yes. If there is a no, then as you can see, you'll skip down to the enter EAPA information into Harmony, because you don't need to make a copy of anything because nothing's in there. So you'll enter that EAPA information into Harmony, create a contact and enter the consumer's information, provide the non-consumer consultation service, and then follow the rest of the flow chart of where it needs to go. So at this point, I'm going to switch over to Mr. Herman, make him a presenter. Let's take a few seconds here.
Okay, so now you've done everything Linda just described. You visited with whoever, but they're not going to give you any information about the provider being abused or potentially being abused. So there's nothing to put in Harmony specifically other than we want to track this phone call or this contact or whatever it is, and that's what is called a non-consumer consultation, and enter it into Harmony. And where we enter it into Harmony is under the consumer groups. And to get to the consumer groups, you go to your consumers menu item at the top. Then you need to make sure that the consumer group is checked under the consumer type filter. Because if it isn't, then you have to remember the names of all these things. So it's easier if you just go click the consumer groups, apply it, and then you'll get the list of all those consumer groups in Harmony that we use for different programs. The one used for EAPA training and education is the EAPA Training and Education group. So you would double click on that, and it opens up just like a consumer, but all you need to be worrying about is the service delivery tab. You don't touch anything else. You just then go to the service delivery tab, and then you would hit add new. And then you would add a new service delivery. Again, the care program is going to be EAPA admitted. The agency is going to be your agency. The provider is going to be whoever the provider is. The service. Oh, mine's messing me up. Just did. Oh. Providers, it's EAPA, and we need to probably change that in the manual. Okay. But EAPA is the care program. The service is going to be EAPA consultation the service is going to be training and education. And then we have a sub-service because this is a consult and not a general awareness kind of thing where you go out and do some kind of presentation. This is strictly, you did talk to someone, they're just not giving you any information. They just don't want to. Then we call that an EAPA consultation. The fund identifier is always going to be Elder Abuse Prevention and Awareness Program. And then what you would do is you would enter one unit, or because it's the unit's an activity, so say today is the 8th. And so I had a contact today, an EAPA consultation. They won't give me any information about the person being abused, so I have to record it under EAPA Training and Education, and it's one consumer. These two things are important because let's just say that I had another one this afternoon after this one. Then I would open the same one and the same service delivery for December, and I would just make that a 2. And the consumers would need to be changed, because what happens is when you increase the units to, say I had another call this afternoon and it was 2, it increases the units, but it doesn't increase the consumer served. So you want to increase that as well. So what that means is the number of units, which is an activity or this contact, should always match the people served. Because if I had 5 contacts today, then there should be 5 consumers I talk to. They just won't give me any information about anybody or anything. Okay? Then, for example, let's close this. So I save and close this. And I've entered the consumer group, EAPA Training and Education. Now, let's say, for example, they gave you the information of the person being abused or potentially being abused. Okay, when the consumer information is provided. Remember that the consumer in harmony, and I'm going to go back to my client test. The consumer in harmony is always the consumer that's going to be potentially abused or not abused. And so this is somebody, you haven't actually talked to the person being abused yet, but you can record the information in harmony because they're giving you the information. But you're not putting the person that you're talking to's information as a consumer, you're putting the person potentially being abused. But we want to record that information about the caller, the non-consumer information. And that gets put under the area called contacts. In a panel in harmony, for every consumer, there's a panel called a contact. There may or not be a panel for the first time when you open a consumer because no one's added any contacts yet. If that's the case, then you come up to the Add New drop-down and hit Contacts. If the contact is already here, you can just Add New from here. we've added a type of contact called EAPA non-consumer. Okay? And then you can add, say John Doe was calling about me, and he's willing to give my information to you, but he's the one you're talking to. Then there's different panels for this particular contact, and this is where you could put John Doe's location addresses, John Doe's phone numbers, any notes about or anything about John Doe. And then when I hit OK, now I've saved that EAPA non-consumer contact information about client test that John Doe called about. Okay. Then what we're going to do is, the expectation is you're going to do an EAPA assessment service form as well. And that's under assessments. When you go to the assessment grid, and again, save your changes. When you go to the assessment grid, a couple of things could be. If this is somebody new and you're the first contact, there might not be any assessments in there. But there might be assessments in there because maybe they got congregate meals, maybe they got home delivered meals. They could have got anything. If there are no assessments, then you can hit Add New. But if there are assessments already in there, then highlight the most recent assessment, hit the Copy button, select the EAPA service form, which is the one you're doing. Make sure you change the care program to EAPA, and then when you fill out your information, whoever, you know, if you're putting the person that's doing the assessment, when I open this, I've copied all that information that was in that previous assessment, like the consumer ADLs, the consumer IADLs, any nutrition screening questions that might have been answered before, and now I'm focusing on information related to the EAPA program that needs to be there. Okay? The other thing is, when you open up this form, when you get down to the consumer consultation part,
And we are on page 12 in your manual, if you're following along in there too.
okay. I apologize. I believe I opened the wrong assessment. Copied the wrong assessment. It's the EAPA assessment service form. There we go. I apologize. I had opened, I see everybody's assessment, and when I do these, I got to figure out how I can only see the one that you guys are used to using.
That happens.
And so now you want to be able, then you need to check, is this a non-consumer consultation? Because this form is a non-consumer consultation assessment form. Then, after the consult, you want to do the priority status after this consult on what priority this is. And I have put in the priority statuses that are found in your manual, if you highlight each of these to find out which one should you pick.
And the priority is if you are going to go out and contact the consumer. That's when the priority statuses come into play. If you don't, then it's consult only, which is the last category there.
And then, as far as collateral information, maybe they give you information about people aware of the situation or whatever. Those are entered under the area called and we can never seem to find them. There it is. Under the collateral information, under the EAPA referrals, and there's enough information for you to enter 3. And always, if there's more than 3.
Plus you also have the contact, the person originally
Right.
contacting you. So that's basically 4 people deep. that might know about that.
And if it gets to where you need more than 5, then we'll need to address that, but we'll wait and see. You always have the ability for every question in an assessment to hit the show notes, and you might be able to type some things in there if you wanted to, and then hide the notes if you needed to. So then I've entered my information, and I've save and close this assessment because I'm done with it, with what needs to be done. And then the expectation is you're going to do a case note, which is done under the Journals tab.
It's on page 14 of the manual.
And then you're going to do your journals. You would hit Add New Journal. This is a EAPA note, so you want to make sure you make it an EAPA note. And type in your subject, your date, and whatever that you're doing. And then type in your comments that you would type in a case note. This is code. And then you hit save and close. You have to have a subject, you know, consult. I hit save and close, and then I save my journal. Now, the other thing that's important, and we're finding that a lot of this is getting left out a lot, I'm going to go back to the EAPA consult information. I'm going to go back to my assessment, and hopefully you would have done this before you even did your journal, before you saved the assessment, but I'm going to open it up. It's important that when it comes to the consult, every consult should have an outcome, and that seems to be getting missed, we're finding. And so there needs to be some kind of outcome to this consult, whether you're going to move further on with an EAPA assessment and intervention, whether the non-consumer is going to advocate, whatever it might be, but try to pay attention and answer one of those. We'll just say, for example, the outcome of this consult is I'm going to move on with a full EAPA assessment and intervention. Okay, I want to show you something else, which is on page 15, okay? When it comes to the assessments grid, because maybe you're going to deal with mainly only EAPA, but I know the trend now is all of you are having multiple jobs now, so you might be the EAP person, you might be the caregiver, you might be the whole kit and caboodle for this consumer in some agencies. But you might want to format your columns any way that's best fit for you, but I'm just suggesting that to make sure that you understand that you're in the right assessment, you might want to have the care program first. You might want to have any way that makes you feel easier for you to make sure that you get the right assessment form, okay? Because that way, because you may have multiple assessments in here, and you just want to make sure that you have the right care program. And as you can see now, I messed this one up, because I should have had that be the EAPA program and not nutrition. And that way, because in theory, it lets you do whatever, but as you're cleaning, as you look at your grids, it can tell you, like, this is an EAPA service form, so I should have been in the EAPA program. And because you're doing multiple things now, I know a lot of you are, it's important that you get these correct, because we wouldn't expect an EAPA service form in the program, those sort of things. So I've done everything. I've done my assessment, I've done my EAPA service form. So now I'm done, and what I would suggest before you get out is deliver your services, okay? So now I'm going to go to service deliveries. I'm going to add a new service delivery, and in this case, again, the care program is going to be EAPA. The agency is going to be your agency. The provider is going to be your agency. The service is going to be whatever the service is, but in this case, it was EAPA non-consumer consultation. The funding identifier, always make sure you pick elder abuse prevention and awareness program. if it's not one of the others, but we expect a funding identifier in every service delivery for EAPA. And then make sure you're in the right month, and then you just deliver how many units or hours. If today this was 3 hours worth of this, then I'm going to save and close. And now I've delivered my EAPA non-consumer information. I want to answer questions. That's a lot.
And I'm switching over presenters. So at this point, we are looking at the second service, the EAPA Consumer Consultation, which can be found on the bottom of page 16 of your manual. And like the other service, we're going to talk about the definition that is found in the IDA reporting manual. And I'll show you the examples. We'll go through the flow chart, and then I will turn it over to Dick to talk about how it's entered into Harmony. So the definition for the EAPA Consumer Consultation Service, this is a service provided to a consumer through a one-on-one discussion that may occur in person, by phone, or electronically, and results in an understanding of the older island's problems and capabilities, linking the consumer to the available resources and services within their local community, the maximum extent practical follow-up to ensure that the consumer receives the services that he or she needs and is aware of the resources that are available. Again, the difference between the consumer consultation and the non-consumer consultation, which the non-consumer consultation we talked about first, is it's who is calling. The first one, it's anybody but the consumer that's calling. The one we're talking about right now is the consumer. So they're calling in about themselves. The next slide provides the reporting examples that, again, can also be found in the reporting manual. It's also on page 17 of your EAPA program manual, and it shows how to record the information and the units of service that are provided. And Dick will also go over that when he talks about Harmony. Excuse me. As we walk through this process, the flow chart, which is at the bottom of page 17, I'm going to start at the top and go across, and then we'll work our way through the flow chart. So at the top, the consumer contacts the elder rights specialist. Again, will the consumer provide their name? This is very similar to what we discussed on the previous flow chart. If no, then you'll provide training and education service. You'll enter that information into Harmony, and you'll select consultation. Now, when Dick and I were out visiting each of the area agencies on aging and going over the training for how information is recorded into Harmony, what we found is that most AAAs, they had a range of like 2 to 4% of the people, the population that would actually fit into this category of not providing their information. So we understand this is a very low percentage and that it will not be used very often, but we also wanted a way to collect that data so that it's not just lost. We needed a place for it to be held. So if we back up then to the consumer contacts the elder rights specialist, that's clear on your far left. The blue diamond, will the consumer provide the name? If the answer is yes, then search Harmony to see if a consumer record exists. And if you go over to the blue diamond to the right, is there a consumer record? If yes, then you open the consumer record, make a copy of the most recent assessment, enter EAPA information into Harmony, provide consumer consultation service, and then at that point, the blue diamond, there's another decision that needs to be made. Does the consumer want to move into the assessment and intervention service? If no, meaning, okay, thank you for sharing this information, and with the information you provided me, either I'll advocate for myself, or I'm going to ask one of my children to help me, or I have a friend, or you know what, I'm just not interested at this time. Whatever the case may be, out of those different examples I just provided, that would be where the no fits in. They just wanted to consult with you, just wanted to talk to somebody, and then they decided that it's not something that they want to pursue at this time. That would be, so at that blue diamond, you go to the right, you select consultation underneath the EAPA priority in Harmony, and then you enter the discharge information in Harmony. So if we back up to that blue diamond, where it says assessment intervention service, if the answer is yes, then you move to the EAPA assessment and intervention process, which we will talk about in a little bit here. So I'm going back up to about mid-page, the kind of orangish, brownish colored square where it says start, from EAPA non-consumer consultation process. So if the call came in and it was a non-consumer that was calling in, and they went through their process, and then the answer was yes, they want you to contact the consumer, that's where this picks up where that other flow chart leaves off. So the EAPA non-consumer consultation process, the elder rights specialist contacts the consumer, and then it connects back up there to where you search if there's a consumer record, or in between the consumer record search and is there a consumer record. So if there is not a consumer record, the answer is no. Then you skip down to that third yellow box in the middle, enter the EAPA information into Harmony, and then follow the flow chart process through there. At this point, I'm going to switch presenters again so that Dick can go through the Harmony process with everyone. Okay, Dick.
Okay. We are recording this, and Lynn and I have talked about how we may refine this and do another one, because I think I forgot something very important that when I did the EAPA non-consumer consultation assessment, and I want to go back to it because it's important at this stage to know. And it has to do with the assessment of the non-consumer consultation. When you are entering a new assessment and it's a non-consumer consultation, make sure in the comments box you type non-consumer consultation, and that is on your page. I just missed it, but anyway, you type it in there, and that's an important, and I'm going to tell you why that's important, because this assessment form that we did has that consumer, non-consumer consultation information as far as when you're doing it and so forth. And then when I save it and I close it, then you'll see the comments. And when I talked about format columns, it's on page 12 of your document where you enter a non-consumer consultation, the comments box, I missed that. Type in non-consumer consultation. Because you might be talking to someone and they haven't, you haven't talked to the person that's being abused yet, and so forth. And now we've moved into that consumer consultation area that Linda just described, and now I want to go back to page 18, which is where we started this. Because now, if you have your format column set to where you have the comments first, the date of the assessment, and then the care program and the form, then at least you'll always have the most recent assessment at the top if you sort. Also, I know this is an EAPA service form that was a non-consumer consultation. And because I'm going to do a consumer consultation now, I'm going to open a new assessment form, but I want a copy from this one so that I can get that information into that assessment that was part of that non-consumer consultation information. So I go copy. And this time, I'm going to do the EAPA assessment service form, and then EAPA admitted, whichever it might be, and then I just go ahead and open this one, and now, when I come down to the consumer consultation part, the APA consultation part, this becomes a consumer consultation. But some of that other stuff, like if you got ADLs and all of that stuff that you asked that other person, would be in this assessment. So then I'm going to do the assessment, open up the assessment. This now becomes a consumer consultation. Once again, select the appropriate priority, because now I'm doing a consumer consult and I'm talking to the consumer. So now it still may be a consult only, but because I've checked up here, it's a consumer consult only. Okay. But I might have a priority now, depending on how soon I have to get out and do an assessment and intervention. Is that correct? Or however that, because we're talking to the consumer now, right? This is a consumer consultation.
Right, you're just consulting with
consulting with them to determine where do you go next, you know. And so maybe they refuse to talk to you, I don't know. But the point is, you need to do the priority. How soon do I need to get out and do an assessment intervention? How soon do I need to follow up with this person? Because it's not a consult only, okay? Then, again, once again, if they give you more collateral information, I can put them into the collateral information up here as well. When I'm done with this consumer consultation, it's the same process as we've gone through before. I'm going to then enter a journal note. Okay. Under the Journals tab, I might have one there before, but I'm going to do Add New. This is an EAPA note. This might be a different subject because I'm actually talking to a consumer. So whatever you might type in there, and you type in some, you know, your comments or whatever it might be. Then I save and close this. Again, just a reminder to do that consult outcome for this one as well. Okay. Then I'm done.
One of the things to note on case notes is that for the EAPA program, what you see on the bottom of page 20 and what Dick just went through, that is required for the program. However, some AAAs have required information also be entered into the activities tab. That is a policy decision for each local AAA to make. That is not a requirement of the Department on Aging. That has been kind of a question in the past, so I just wanted to make sure that we clarified that.
Thank you. So then I'm doing my consumer consultation. Hopefully, it's not a priority, you got to get out there in the next hour, but hopefully they've agreed for you to come out and do an assessment and intervention, but you're done, except now I got to deliver my services again, because now I've done the service of consumer consultation, which is what we were talking about, EAPA consumer consultation. So I'm going to come to service deliveries. I'm going to add a new service delivery. The care program is going to be EAPA. The agency is going to be Milestones. The provider would be Milestones. The service is now EAPA consultation. Okay? The fund identifier is always going to be Elder Abuse Prevention and Awareness Program unless it's something else. Always make sure this is filled out. It's important. Same thing with anything else. If this was done today, this would be, say I was on the phone with them for 3 hours. Then I deliver my 3 hours, hit save and close, and now I've delivered my 3 hours of EAPA consultation.
Okay, so now we're ready to talk about the third service, EAPA assessment and intervention. The definition of the EAPA assessment and intervention, keep in mind, up to this point, we've had a referral come in. It was either a non-consumer consultation, and that consultation could have ended with just consultation, or it could have ended with, yes, you've consulted with me, but now I'd like you to go out and talk to the person I'm calling with my concerns about. So everything that has happened previous to this is all consultation. Same thing with the consumer. If the consumer called in directly and you've been visiting with them for a while and have explained the program and some different services that could come out there and such, that that they could, that they're willing for you to come out and want you to come out to their home and to do an assessment and intervention plan. Until you actually go out to do that, keep in mind everything is considered a consultation. So this is the point that we're at this juncture, is that no matter how it got here, whether it was a non-consumer consultation or a consumer consultation, there is a visit with the consumer. So the service is provided by an elder rights specialist to an EAPA program consumer that entails one-on-one discussions and the administration of a standardized assessment tool and other procedures identified to help identify their existing impairments, their situation, problems, and to determine appropriate services and resources to redress the consumer's current or potential abuse situation. It's actually an intervention and action plan, and again, we'll talk about that a little bit later is when Dick gets into it with Sam. You know, it talks about advocacy, counseling, there's case documentation, again, the intervention plan that defines the services and assistance to address the needs and the timelines and providers. There's goals, there's outcomes, there's ongoing follow-up and reassessment. There's case closure planning, including placement assistance if necessary. And keep in mind with this program, this is not a long-term program in the sense of it's not like case management where the individual would be on the program long-term, meaning, you know, years and such. This is a program where if you think of people, you know, going on in their daily life, if you think of it kind of like a racetrack, the cars on the racetrack, if one of them blows a tire, they go to their pit crew, and the pit crew fixes the car and then gets them back on the track. EAPA program that's what's intended to use, is to be kind of the pit crew to help people address that imminent need and get them back on their track. Again, here's some reporting examples. The reporting examples are on page 23. It's also in the reporting manual. And then the process flow. The process flow here, if you start at the top, the EAPA consumer consultation has been completed. You went through that, or, you know, again, or they have went through the non-consumer consultation and you have contacted them. So the first decision is, does the consumer have a legal representative? If yes, then the question is, does the legal representative have legal documents to prove that relationship? If yes, and I want to kind of pause this conversation just for a couple of seconds. We will talk about that later in just a few minutes here as we're going through this on how that all rolls out. So if yes, then you obtain the copies of the legal documents, completed an assessment, enter the service type in the comments sections. You'll develop an intervention plan and implement it. If the goals are met, yes. Are there additional needs? In a clean-cut world, if the way that this worked, if there were no additional needs, you'd complete your documentation in harmony and discharge them from the program. However, we all know that typically when you get into these situations and you start peeling back all of the components that are involved, a lot of times, even if the initial goals are met, additional needs are identified. And if so, then you go back up to complete the assessment on them for those additional needs, and then follow the flow chart through. We go back up to if the goals are met, that's second blue diamond from the bottom. If they are not met, then again you go back up, complete an assessment, and try some different interventions and identifications. Because sometimes, you know, the presenting problem, or what appears to be the presenting problem, you start setting up services and coordination of services and start addressing that, and then come to find out that, you know, that really was kind of a symptom of the problem rather than the problem. So then we need to address the problem. So that is also not uncommon. So if we scoot back up to the top where it says the top blue diamond, it says, does the consumer have a legal representative? If not, then of course you communicate directly with the consumer and then follow the flow chart through. Some additional information that we want to share with you on this part of, or for this service, you will find on the bottom of page 24, it talks about the priority levels. There's priority 1, 2, and 3. The priority levels are set in our administrative code. And here in a couple of minutes, when Dick gets into Harmony and shows you this aspect again, one of the nice features that he suggested adding is that on the priority level, when you kind of hover over it, it tells you what the time frame is, and then there's also a definition so that it's right there in the system, so you don't have to go back to your manual. So I think that's helpful when to help provide a little bit more efficiency. So with priority 1, first of all, let me say that we are not a emergency 911 service. That is just not what we do. That is not our capability. We don't have the resources. And when I say we, I mean the whole aging network. So that is not what we do. So when we're looking at priority 1, what we're looking at is the at-risk older individual's health or safety is an immediate danger, and the individual requires immediate intervention. That contractor shall contact appropriate agencies such as Department of Human Services, EMTs, law enforcement, and such. It's not our job to scoop them up and take them directly to, if they're calling you, then, and they are not, for whatever reason, they're calling you instead of 911, then contact 911 to get some help there to them. In those types of situations, a face-to-face visit with the at-risk older adult and completion of the assessment form shall occur after the life-threatening situation is resolved and within 1 business day. Priority 2 is the at-risk older individual's health or safety is not an immediate danger, but the risk is real and foreseeable in the future. It's kind of like you're just waiting for, it just makes you very anticipate or anxious, or it's kind of like you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop kind of thing. A face-to-face visit with the at-risk older individual needs to occur, and the completion of the assessment shall be made within 4 working days. Priority 3, the at-risk older individual's health or safety is not an immediate danger, but there is a potential risk for abuse, neglect, self-neglect, or exploitation. Then you need to have contact with the at-risk older individual within 10 working days. Points to note on this. The assessment is to include factual information, not any opinion or commentary. Kind of like that old commercial, just the facts, man or man. Regarding their environment, changes in the status or their services, their statements that they might make, service needs and areas of concern, interviews with care providers or other persons involved with the client, that shall also be documented. Again, kind of like with the screening tool, approaches everything. Make sure that, when you're talking with them, if you ask them questions like, are you having trouble, do you have adequate, do you have enough food or whatever in your cupboards? And they say no, don't just leave it at that. Kind of ask some more probing questions as to why, because, do they not have enough money? Well, if they don't have enough money, why don't they have enough money? Well, because they're being financially exploited. So we want to make sure that we keep digging down in the layers that we get to what the situation is. There also note changes in physical and mental status. Those shall be assessed and documented. The assessment's intended to provide an overall picture, a snapshot of the individual and their environmental situation, so that you can provide an evaluation of what elements might have contributed to the possible abuse or the risk at the situation. Mandatory reporters. There may be occasions in which mandatory reporters contact the elder rights specialist. That is not uncommon for that to happen. Again, for the public awareness and such, people, your name is out there in the community and they're thinking, oh, I need to report elder abuse, so I'm going to report it to the elder rights specialist. If that mandatory reporter has a suspicion that abuse may have occurred, you're required to inform him or her that he or she is a mandatory reporter and that they are mandated to report the situation to DHS. But them reporting to you does not meet their requirement that they need to report it to DHS. And of course, elder rights specialists and anyone working in this area is a mandatory reporter. Legal representation documentation. If a consumer has a legal representative, that legal representative shall provide appointment papers. This is in our rules, the administrative rules, which again is law. They shall provide those appointment papers, a court order, power of attorney documentation within 72 hours of being requested by the elder rights specialist. If they don't produce them, then we behave as if they do not exist. They need to, because anyone could just say, hey, I'm a legal representative for, you know, Sally or for John or for my mom, my dad, my uncle, what have you. We need proof to see make sure that is actually true. And you also need to have copies of that. The legal representative signature shall be obtained on the assessment and released before the consumer receives the services. If there's a suspicion of abuse, neglect, exploitation, or self-neglect of an older individual, and the legal representative will not permit access to that individual, then the contractor, meaning the elder rights specialist, people working in this program, they shall make an oral and written report to the Department of Human Services and Law Enforcement pursuant to Iowa Code 235B.3. Keep in mind, if you're a legal representative, you are a caregiver of that individual. So if that individual is needing assistance and you suspect that they're dependent, which they already are dependent if they have a legal representative, otherwise they wouldn't need a legal representative, and the legal representative obviously is their caregiver, then that report needs to be made to the Department of Human Services. You're also required to notify the judge in probate for the county in which the guardianship or conservatorship was filed by certified letter within 5 days of the denial of access. The notification shall detail the concerns, potential consequences of the guardian's or conservator's actions or inaction that appears not to be in the best interest of the older individual. At this point, I am going to change presenters, and Dick will talk about how to record this information into SANS.
Thank you, Linda. Well, everyone, I did it again. When I did the consumer consultation EAPA service form, I forgot to mention to you that in the comments box or the notes box of that assessment you're doing, make sure you put consumer consultation, okay? And the reason for that is because now I'm going to do an assessment and intervention, but there's already been a non-consumer consultation, there's already been a consumer consultation, and now, because of those things, we're ready to do an assessment and intervention. And so if I were to highlight the consumer consultation part, copy that into my new service form, and then the care program is EAPA, provider is Milestones or whoever you're going to pick, and this one happens to be Milestones Agency, so I'm going to do Milestones. And then this one, we want you to type in the comments assessment and intervention, because that way now when I go to do this assessment, now I would have already copied over all this consult stuff that, you know, would have been there in the consultation and so forth. And so now, when I go to my assessment and intervention area of the assessment, the EAPA assessment information, and so forth, now I'm filling out all the stuff that I'm going to do about this assessment, okay? So I got the date of the assessment, it'll pull over consumer demographics, do all of that stuff, and then as far as the referral, it would have pulled any information that would have been in that referral area from the other ones. Same thing with the consult, and now I'm actually adding to what I've done before with all this additional information that's in your assessment tool. I answer all my questions. I just wanted, before I get, this will be the last time I think I do assessments, but just a reminder that anytime you're in a form and there's a number by the question, if you hit the number, it'll answer it for you. You don't have to click if you don't want to. A number will answer that question for you. Once again, don't forget your priority statuses, as Linda talked about.
Hover over it.
Yes. And so under the priority statuses, so forth, there.
As you can see, when he hovers over it, it gives a definition of, abbreviated definition
Right.
of what that priority means.
So again, I complete my assessment, I save and close, and now, you know, maybe you did this in the home, maybe you did it, you know, however you did it, but now the point is, from a program perspective, now your plan is to do an intervention plan, an EAPA intervention plan. And Linda, instead of having a separate document, the program has decided to use the care plan area of Harmony to enter that information. And so you would go to care plans, you would select add a new care plan, enter the appropriate information. This is milestones.
This is on page 28 of the manual.
Whoever the primary, your EAPA specialist name, you need to find your name. If you're not finding your name, then you need to let me know, because there's a reason that you're not finding it, and it's not anything to do with you. We're not tracking any roles. They may be in multiple programs, so it's important when it comes to care plans, you select the appropriate program. And I want to show all of them, and I want to pick EAPA. Okay? Because now I'm in this is the care program, it's active. We're not doing any reasons right now. So you've got this much information filled out. That's all I need to do. Now I'm opening the care plan. And you'll see a care plan area here, and you'll notice it has the information. The thing, we're not using the service plan area of it. We're not using a diagnosis codes area of it. We're only using the goal area of it. And you would hit add new, because you're going to enter some goals of this intervention plan. What we have put in there are all the goals related to EAPA, and they start with the EAPA. And you select whichever one you are trying to establish a goal for. So let's just say this happened to be financial exploitation. Okay. Then you also want to enter a target date that you plan on getting this particular goal done. Maybe you're hoping within 2 weeks, you know, so 2 weeks from today might be December 22nd. I don't know if that's right, but that's what I'm going to put, okay? And so now I've done this, and then in the comments section, okay, is where you will type more specifics about how you're going to address that. These are where those action steps would be. As you can see on page 22, maybe we're going to, we'll seek, 29. We'll seek counseling by a certain date. 2000 whatever. I would think it would be before December 22nd, but I'm just saying you would type in a date. So let's just say by next month on the 15th, we hope to secure counseling. And then again, you would just add another one, but you'd enter all the activities related to this goal. Then I would hit OK, and now I save this goal. Maybe I have other goals too. I can add as many goals as I need to add for this particular intervention plan. Maybe as you've done the assessment, you found some other things that you need to address. Maybe it's emotional stress. Then you'll pick a date that you want to get that done. Maybe that's more important, and you hope to get that done by the 8th, by the end of the day. Who knows? And you're hopefully going to make a call today. You know, I'm going to call someone today. So I've got my goals, okay? Now, let's say, for example, I achieved those goals. Then simply you would come into this care plan, open up that goal that I was going to achieve, and maybe I got it done on the before the 22nd. Maybe I got it done today, I'm so good. Then I check it achieved. Then I hit OK. And so this intervention plan would be current with goals and things for the whole episode of this intervention, the APA admission process. Now, you may also, this is like anything else, there's a save and close. So you want to save and close, so I'm going to close this. So this is just like any other grid. That's why the care program is important, because you may be having multiple hats, and you might have care plans for case management if you do case management. You might have care plans for other things, so you want to make sure you're in the right program. And that's where the format columns comes in again, just like with any grid. And you can rearrange things and put them in any order that you want. Now, let's say, for example, there's some forms that are important for this. You have an example on top of my head?
Yeah, on page 30, it talks about different types of file attachments. Is that your phone?
Yes.
So the different file attachments that would be included in here is the client signature page, release or releases of information. If the legal representative documentation that we talked about earlier, that can be scanned and inserted, attached in here. Also purchase of service documents, if there's some funding or if there's some services that you purchase for individuals, and different types of invoices. And
so say you have those forms, you can scan those forms into a PDF or a picture file or whatever. Then you come to file attachments, and we're going to add that document to this consumer. And I've created folders out there for each of the programs. So this is an EAPA attachment. You might want to give it a description, whatever it is. So let's just say it's a client signature page. Then you got the hardest thing I always have, you got to go find it. Remember where you put it. So you go find the document and you attach it. Then when you hit save and close, it attached that document. And these documents now are on with this consumer. They're still on your computer, but they're on this consumer. So you don't ever have to go find them again. You can always have them here in this consumer, so that when I have these documents, I can then always open that document at any time from here and do whatever I want with that document. So when I close this document, save my changes, it's there. I can just do whatever. Okay? And it's there for me to see. So when I open the folder, there it is. Any questions?
Ask questions.
Oh, sorry. My bad. Out of a habit.
We'll ask questions here in a couple minutes. Did you do the service?
One more thing. This view attachment here is the button. If I want to view this attachment, I can open it up. And then if I need to print it, I can print it from here, but I don't have to go find it on my computer anymore because it's saved with this consumer. Okay? Then I'm done now, and now I need to deliver my service deliveries that I did for this, because I have the service delivery of assessment and intervention that I did. So I come to my service deliveries, I hit add new, same as before, care programs, the APA, agencies milestones, providers milestones, but the service is the APA assessment and intervention. Again, at this point, we're not using subservice, but the funding identifier is important because I told you we need one. So it's either going to be elder abuse prevention all the time or something else, but we want something in here. And it should be elder abuse and prevention and awareness program until that money runs out. Okay. Then, for example, if it was today and I spent 3 hours doing this assessment, and this isn't like, especially for those of you who have multiple hats, it doesn't matter. It's the total time to do this. If it took me an hour to drive to the home, an hour in the home, and an hour back home, it's 3 hours of assessment and intervention, period. Okay? The other thing, as the example said, in the reporting manuals now, we want these to be a monthly total. And you can put partial hours in Harmony now when it comes to hourly units. So if this took 3.5 hours, then the units would be 3.5, not 4. because it'll sum up all this time for the month over here in this monthly total. So then I hit save and close. I've delivered my units. And now I'm just done all I need to do today for this consumer.
The next service is the EAPA Training and Education Service. This is the fourth service underneath the EAPA program. The definition is activities meant to impart knowledge, experience, or skills to an individual or group about elder abuse, neglect, and/or exploitation. Topics may include, or methods may include, forums, outreach events, including social media, newsletters and articles, group trainings and presentations, and all of that would be underneath the general awareness subservice. And then, as we have talked about before, non-consumer consultations where the consumer's name is anonymous, or consumer consultations, that needs to be added to this slide, or consumer consultations where the consumer's name needs to be remain anonymous. The reporting example scenario is listed here. Again, this is in the reporting manual. And it gives you gives you an example of how to record this for measures and such. Again, as you can see, I'm going to back up a slide here. On the definition, when we talk about activities, the question of why did we put non-consumer consultations when the person is anonymous or the consumer is anonymous for consumer consultations? Why we put it underneath, again, training and education. And as you can see in the definition, it talks about, an individual, activities meant to impart knowledge, experience, or skills to an individual or a group. So it fits nicely under there. And it also is a very, very, as you guys all know, is a very small part of the population, because typically if they're calling, they will give you information about the person that they are calling about, or they're just doing it, to provide consultation. So then we have the reporting example. And then at this point, I will put it over to Dick so that he can change a presenter so that Dick can discuss how this is to be entered in the Harmony. Some of it we have talked about. He also wants to demonstrate the other part.
Okay, once again, all the things that Linda just talked about are entered as consumer groups, because we've talked about when a consumer is not provided any information. We already talked about that, but now we're talking about those things that are large groups or presentations and things like that, where you're not getting individual information about people or potentially being abused or abused. That falls under EAPA Training and Education as a consumer group. And so you would go to your consumer groups, and remember, just a reminder, if I had set this filter once, it's going to stay there till I get rid of it. So you won't see anything but consumer groups if you go back to your consumer grid if you don't uncheck this. But I left it there because I knew we were coming back to it. So you would open up EAPA Training and Education. You select Service Deliveries. You simply select Add New. The care program is EAPA Admitted, and this is what's telling me that we should be using EAPA Admitted, because I've noticed when I do to the service deliveries, it's EAPA Admitted, and I kind of hit EAPA on some other things because it's me. So it's EAPA Admitted, the agency's milestones, the provider, or it's EAPA, the provider's milestones, the provider's milestones agency. The service would be EAPA Training and Education. Okay. The subservice now will depend on whether, remember we already talked about non-consumer consultation, so you would have picked that. But now we're going to use EAPA General Awareness, because this is those presentations and talks and so forth that you are presenting. Then the funding identifier is, we always said we're not going to forget, Elder Abuse Awareness Program. And then the activity is like is talked about in the example. For example, if this morning I went out and did one presentation and there was 20 people there, then I put 20 in the consumer served. Now, just like with any other consumer group, I know the intent is the best possible that this is an unduplicated count, the best that you can do. So say, for example, let's just pretend in the case that I went out on the 4th somewhere, okay, and I did a presentation to a group of 20 people. So I'm just going to save this. Let's say, for example, on the 5th, I went out to the exact same location, to the exact same people, and did something different, but it was still an activity of EAPA training and education. We don't want you putting 40 here because you're we're trying to make this an unduplicated count. If there was new people there, then you'd add the new people to it. If there was 10 new people there, then it was 30 people. So we've got 2 activities, 30 people. If it was a brand new activity, say you did another activity on the 6th to totally different people, that's 3 units, but then I want to add to the consumers that are there. You know, if it was 50 different people, that now becomes 80. And you just would continue that for the month, and then you would hit save or save and close, whichever you prefer. And I've delivered those units for EAPA education and training. So now let's say, for example, you solved this person's problems, you kept them out of the nursing home, you got all their money situation straightened out, so now you need to discharge them from the program. And now what we're going to do is come back to my consumer, which is my client test. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the care enrollments. Okay, I'm going to show them all. And then this would have been EAPA admitted instead of EAPA because I picked it wrong. But the point is I'm going to add a new care enrollment. So I need to add the current admitted care enrollment. And let's just say I solved all their problems today. So, and again, just a reminder, T is today's date, Y is yesterday, and if you start typing TOM, it'd put tomorrow. But today's date, okay, good. Must occur after the start date. This is that Harmony thing, okay? So when it comes to this, you might need to make this a 7 because you're just going to have to. Or make this a 9. I don't know how often it happens the same day, but the point is you need to end this care enrollment when it ended, but because I'm getting the red message, I'm just going to leave that alone. Okay. And then I'm going to add a discharged one, because now I'm going to do a level of care, elder abuse and prevention and awareness, service program is discharged, the status is discharged. What's the reason? Hopefully its services are no longer needed and we resolved all their issues. This is very important that you answer this reason on when you discharge someone, because this is what affects the performance evaluation outcome reports that the department runs and you'll be running for yourself, because that's one of the performance measures Linda will be talking about later. And then if this ended today, which I know we have this Harmony issue, they still haven't fixed, and then I hit OK, and now discharge them. I'm just telling you right now, and then if Linda's okay with this, because of this issue, if you're having a problem because it happens the same day, you don't need to put an end date on the admitted one, because I'll know that was the discharge date on the discharge thing, just so you don't get all concerned with the red error message. And Linda says that's fine. And so then I save and close, and I save, and I'm done.
Okay, so at this part of the orientation, just going to talk about, that covers those different services in the EAPA program, and it covers how information is to be entered into SAMS. And there's just a few more topics that we want to make sure that are clarified, and they begin on page 35 of your manual. Talks about joint assessments. The Elder Rights Specialist or the EAPA Specialist is a resource for DHS worker and or law enforcement on available services in the infirmities of aging. You guys are experts in this area, and not only for these individuals, but also for, you know, community providers and, you know, again, the partners that we've talked about, you know, county attorneys and the whole gamut. So, you know, that's one of the things that we're really marketing and informing people is, you know, again, you guys are the specialists, you guys are the experts, and that when it comes to joint assessments, that offering options to the client is independent from DHS findings, and if it is also a dependent adult abuse case, again, you can be working in tandem, meaning with the same client as DHS or law enforcement. There is different referral outcomes. You know, DHS and law enforcement, they might operate independent of the elder rights specialist, and there'll be situations like that. There'll also be situations where the DHS or law enforcement, they might engage in a joint assessment with the elder rights specialist or the EAPA specialist. Say, hey, you know what, we really need your expertise in these areas. They also may reject the report and make a referral to the elder rights specialist. Iowa Code Authority. DHS has code authority to work with the elder rights specialist underneath Iowa Code Section 235B.3, paren 5. And as you see up there, it doesn't specifically say the area agencies on aging in the EAPA program or the elder rights specialist. It doesn't specifically name you. But what it does is it does say that following the report of suspected dependent adult abuse, the Department of Human Services or an agency approved by the department, which includes the area agencies on aging, shall complete an assessment of necessary services and shall make appropriate referrals for receipt of these services. I don't think this is as big of an issue as it was, probably about 20 years ago. When we were trying to get the law changed, we were trying to get it to say that DHS would work jointly with the elder rights specialist. This was when the before the EAPA as well. We were trying to, again, help those individuals that were falling through the cracks. And this was kind of the compromise, is that they were making it inclusive, or an agency approved by the department, which is underlined there on the slide. Because what that would do is, if they needed to contact a mental health expert, that they could do that, a behavioral expert, they could do that, and which absolutely makes sense. So you guys fall in there is the whole point. A DHS is encouraged to call and partner with the elder rights specialist whenever the alleged victim is 60 years of age or older. When it gets to interviews, interviewing the consumer, the EAPA specialist or the elder rights specialist, they must have permission from an adult living in the household to enter the home. If the older individual has a guardian, as a courtesy, ask permission from the guardian to speak with the individual unless the concern is in reference to the guardian. It needs to occur in a non-disruptive environment without the offender present. I think a lot of times, depending on the situation, I mean, even seasoned people that have worked in these situations with consumers that are being abused, you know, sometimes the adrenaline just really gets going, and you don't really think of the surroundings. All you can think of is, I want to help them, help them, help them. And inadvertently, questions have been asked of the consumer in front of the person who is perpetrating it. And of course, you're not going to get the appropriate response, or I shouldn't say the appropriate, the correct response, the truth out of it if you have someone in there. And even if it isn't the perpetrator, it's nice just to talk to them one-on-one, because what they tell you, they may not say the same thing if their family, loved ones, neighbors, or whatever are around, for a variety of different reasons. The purpose of the interview is to evaluate the situation, identify the nature and scope of the abuse or the risk, and assess the cognitive, emotional, and physical capabilities. You know, they might be able to say, oh yeah, I can get out of the house if I need to, and it turns out that all of the handles are actually doorknobs rather than levers, and they may have osteoarthritis so bad in their hands that there is just absolutely no way that they could get out of the home. Make sure that, you know, you're cognizant and aware of all of those types of factors, and just because they say that they can or can't, that you might, you know, say, oh, you can, well, show me how you can get out. You know, how do you get out the front door? Show me what you would do. Not, oh, I don't believe you, you know, but just have them demonstrate, because, and they may very well have a technique that they use in order to be able to accomplish that. I'm also assessing the home environment, the relationships with others living in the residence, and also with service providers, and also information on the alleged offender. Gather information related to prior incidents or similar abuse of the situation. When you're interviewing other sources, attempts shall be made to conduct interviews with persons. Those are the collaterals. And remember, Dick was talking about the collaterals, that how you can capture those and are to capture those in Harmony. And also the person contacting, which would also be a collateral, is can be captured underneath the contact. So you have room for at least 4. And if you need more than that, as Dick said, there's ways that we can capture that too in the notes section or what have you. And make sure you talk to them if they have relevant information about the situation and allegations. A release of information is not required to request information from any person. However, a release of information is required to share information with others. And we'll talk about releases here coming up. And speaking with collateral, try to determine if the injury and circumstances are consistent with the allegations. Photographs. Those may be taken of the home and the client themselves to help illustrate the environment and the current situation. However, permission needs to be requested and a release signed by the client or the client's legal representative, whichever is appropriate. Refusal of assistance. This probably is one of the hardest things with this program, is that if people refuse assistance, and you know that they really need it, that is very difficult. But again, you know, this is they get to be the one they are the one in the driver's seat. They are the ones that get to decide what will or will not happen in the situation in their life. So a client has a right to refuse services at any point. There's nothing wrong with encouraging them or trying to encourage, but if, you know, no is no as well. So. Everyone has the right to make poor choices and the right to self-determination. And if you think about it, we all self-neglect in some way, shape, or form. It's just what degree. And again, they get the right to choose how their life is going to be on that front. However, if dependent adult abuse is suspected, it shall be reported to law enforcement, the Department of Human Services, and the county attorney pursuant to mandatory reporter requirements. A business card shall be left with instructions on how to contact the local elder rights specialist or the EAPA specialist. Business card, or even if there's a pamphlet, you know, with information about your agency, you know, that type of thing. Further follow-up contact shall be attempted even if the contacts are in the form of a welfare check. You know, you may have went out there and talked with them, and they may have said, nope, I'm not interested, leave. You know, leave your information and be respectful of their wishes. But there's no reason why you can't contact them in another, you know, say 10 days, 2 weeks. If, you know, we were talking about earlier too that, you know, you're establishing a relationship. One of the things we keep saying is that, you know, when we're doing our presentations is don't trust people that just knock on your door and want to do this or that, or, you know, be very, you know, cautious of people when they, you know, again, approach you or call you out of the blue. Well, and then in turn, that's exactly what we're doing, but we're trying to help. So a lot of this, again, is relationship building, spending time with them, and, you know, checking back in just to see how they're doing. Releases of information. That information can be found on page 36 and 37 in your manual. 36 has a narrative part, and then 37 has examples of both of them. There's 2 types of releases of information. One to obtain information for healthcare, and then the other one is for medical or financial information. The releases of information, the appropriate release of information shall be signed by the consumer or the consumer's legal representative prior to the provision of services. In priority one cases, this is in general, but in priority one cases, if obtaining their signature will delay the process of immediate intervention or protection of the at-risk older adult safety, telephone approval is acceptable and it shall be documented in the assessment. In this situation, approved signature shall be obtained as soon as a life-threatening situation is resolved and a face-to-face assessment is conducted. An example of this is several years ago, there was an individual, law enforcement called the Area Agency on Aging, said, hey, we have this person that's living in, well, they were in their own home. They had a relative living with them that had a little mess factory thing going on, and they needed to remove the older adult so that they could come in and clean the home and also take care of the person committing the crime. And so what had happened is the elder rights specialist went out, took the person who had a lot of other different issues, was able to put them up in a hotel and get the other services surrounding them, wrapping around them to help them. And then they went back out and talked through the paperwork, because we don't want to, it's like going into the emergency room and saying, here, we have all this paperwork you have to fill out before we treat you, which we don't want that to happen. So in those situations, there is that caveat. A release shall also be signed by a consumer or the consumer's legal representative. Again, as we talked about earlier, if there's photographic images, electronic images, or recordings that are taken, and before providing information to another party, unless an allegation of abuse is being communicated to DHS, law enforcement, or the Department of Inspections and Appeals. The only exception is in an MDT setting. Funding for services, this is still in our administrative rules, and this is an area where we really need, the department needs to update the administrative rules. The administrative rules that we have, which again, they're laws, so we have to follow them, were established underneath the Elder Abuse Initiative demonstration projects. So in some places it kind of reads a little bit rocky, or seems a little bit disjointed. So funding for services, if a AAA makes a determination that they have some services, some people use material aid in order to get some services into the elder abuse prevention program, that if they need available services, that they can access them basically almost instantaneous, so that they don't have to go through a bunch of paperwork to receive it. Underneath the Elder Abuse Initiative, there was money set aside. However, in the EAPA program, as you saw with the services that were listed, the consumer consultation, non-consumer consultation, assessment and intervention, and training and education, there's not a separate service funding source for the emergency services. So that's something that we need to look at. So these next, some of these next few pages with the purchase of service and such, page 38 and 39, again, it's going to be policy specific by AAA. You also want to look and explore what the client and or their family, what resources they have and be able to contribute, and whether they can contribute, $25 or, excuse me, whatever amount, it's giving them ownership, and they're also helping resolve their own problems. So they're owning part of it. So that's an important component. The client may also choose any vendor. However, use the care to find the lowest estimate with the highest quality, which sometimes that can be tricky. We talked earlier about creative, innovative thinking when we're talking about networking with different resources in your community, so that you can tap into them for assistance of resources such as Habitat for Humanity. We talked about high schools with their vocational technology classes. They have, a lot of them have volunteer hours that they have to have. The kids, high school students need to have. They might be a resource, faith-based entities, National Guard, Rotary Lions, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. Examples, what has been used in the past is that they're one-time fees. And the way that they've been used is legal fees to establish a guardianship or conservatorship, fees for mediation intervention, exterminator for pest control. And we understand that with pest control, you know, because the funding was not to be ongoing, but we also understand with pest control, you can't just have an exterminator come in one time and the situation be done. So it's basically the initial one plus the maintenance fees to address that situation, but it's not the ongoing, you know, every month after that situation's picked up. Dumpsters to eliminate dangerous clutter, deposited first month's rent, who is facing homelessness or needs to move to a different location to be away from the abuser. Different examples. We talked about the different expression or the exceptions. I'm going to kind of again flip through some of these because again it needs to be different funding sources as established by the AAA, and again we need to update our rules on that. The little graphic up there is earlier I was talking about how people are, you know, on their life track. Think of it kind of like a racing track, and when say if they pop a tire or they need something, you know, we're the pit crew. So I think that's just very important for us to stress because we want to make sure that with our limited resources and our including staff and time and funding, that we make sure that this is not an ongoing situation that these people are, you know, we're their pit crew, come in, help them get stabilized, help get some different methods in place, and then get them back on their racetrack or their life track. Monitoring and reassessment. The AAA shall monitor the provision of the services identified in the intervention plan or in the goals. I mean, the intervention plan to see how their goals are coming along, and conduct and document a face-to-face client reassessment every 6 months or whenever there's a significant change in the client's health, physical health, mental, economic status, risk, and they shall update the intervention plan accordingly. Remember on the flow chart, we were talking about additional needs and the goals and such, that's where this section falls in. Case records and record retention. A case record shall be maintained for each client and shall contain the assessment, the correspondence, the intervention plan, medical records, updates, legal representative documents, client notes and such. That's the section where Dick was talking about how you could attach files. Case records shall be maintained for a minimum of 5 years from the date a case is closed, and it gives the listing again there of what the case record shall include. It's on your slide, and it's also on page 40. Data collection and analysis. Quarterly reports are generated by the Department on Aging, and I talked about that earlier, Q1 of this fiscal year. That started July 1, is going to be disseminated next week. It'll be provided to the AAA executive directors, their boards, and also the AAA program staff. It'll be discussed at the quarterly work group meetings to identify items such as, but not limited to, how the system is performing, if there is data entry concerns, areas for technical assistance, techniques for replication, kind of like the best practices, you know, and what are some good things that are happening out there. IDA staff will also generate a fiscal year end report for analysis and action. The FY17 report has been completed, and I believe that is going to be sent out next week as well. So performance measures, Dick talked about those a little bit before. These two performance measures are in the area plan and also in the state plan to help evaluate and the EAPA program. So this is one of the many reasons why we need to make sure that the data is entered, and that it's entered consistently across the state, and that we're using all the same definitions and such. So again, one of the performance measures is percentage of EAPA consultation consumers whose needs are met through provider referrals for self-advocacy. So again, Dick and I were talking about how this first quarter, there were probably about 50% or so of the outcomes, it was not filled out for about 50% of the consumers. So one, it skews our data, and two, it's a requirement that it be filled out, and we need it for one of our performance measures. Also, the second performance measure, percentage of EAPA assessment intervention, consumer cases closed with EAPA services no longer needed. The expected outcome is that older Iowans experiencing abuse, neglect, or exploitation will have their situation resolved with assistance from a AAA elder rights specialist or EAPA specialist. Information sharing and referrals. We've talked a little bit about this, so I'll just kind of review this a little bit quickly. Authorization to obtain or release information form. An applicable release of information shall be obtained before providing any information to another party unless you're communicating an allegation of abuse to DHS, law enforcement, or DIA. Again, the only exception is in an MDT setting. Those are the DHS MDT settings. Referral to the long-term care ombudsman. Those referrals should be made to the ombudsman when an EAPA client moves to a long-term care facility or to assisted living. What we're doing is we're just wanting to make sure that the ombudsman is aware that there's a situation there, and it's the communication link, and to help keep the person as safe as possible. And likewise, the ombudsman will make referral to the elder rights specialist when a resident moves from a long-term care facility to a private residence, if the resident is okay with them sharing that information. Protective action. If there's a need for protective action, contact DHS. If DHS is able to pursue, again, if it needs to fall within the dependent adult abuse criteria. If DHS is able to pursue the action, you can be the available resource and help them. If they're unable to pursue the action, it might be necessary for you to pursue the avenue with another knowledgeable collateral source. Or, and I'm kind of skipping down to the third bullet, or we now have that Iowa Code 235S, which allows protective orders to be pursued by anyone, and also the legal hotline for older Iowans, or, and I know in Heritage they have legal assistance access as well, provider they can utilize. Emergency protective orders and guardianships. This is, there's a possibility that the alleged offender may not be a caretaker for the older Iowans, and as a result, DHS may not be involved. But without DHS, approach law enforcement, talk to them about securing a protective order. With DHS participation, you can approach the county attorney's office to secure a protective order. Now, I completely understand that this is, excuse me, there's pockets across the state that law enforcement and DHS do very well in this area, and I understand that there's pockets that have room for improvement. Client safety teams. If there is not an active DHS MDT in your area, the elder rights specialist or the EAPA specialist needs to meet with DHS to offer assistance in setting one up or reviving the team. If those attempts are unsuccessful, then a client safety team is to be established, and then DHS invited to that. Client safety team guidelines. This is on page 42 of your manual. Excuse me. They're similar to MDTs in fact that they have the same members, the same, you have community providers, medical providers, again, local Department of Public Health, ISU Extension, law enforcement, county attorneys, what have you. The guidelines is that, send invitations requesting a representative from these different entities. The meetings are facilitated by the elder rights specialist or the EAPA specialist. You'll also have an attendance sign-in sheet that will be provided by the elder rights specialist or EAPA specialist, signed by all the attendees. The purpose of the meeting is to collaborate and consult and consider options for clients' health and safety, and these options can be shared with the client, the consumer. The client, case discussions and scenarios shall not disclose any of the consumer's family, legal representative, or any individual's names or information. Basically, no identifying information. You can talk about situations and case scenarios without saying, it's, the Hildreth family, it's, whoever family. Because you're looking for different options. The confidentiality is of the utmost importance. Case files shall not be brought to the meetings. Attendance sheets shall be maintained in a minimum of 5 years, according with Iowa Code Chapter 305. Training, education, general awareness. We talked about this earlier, and how to record it in SAMS, and it is one of the services underneath the EAPA program. When you arrange training opportunities and participate in educational events on the large range of aging issues, and local resources help provide that. Again, you guys are the experts, and people don't know we exist unless we get out there and chirp and let people know that, here we are and we can help, and this is how we can help. Targeted populations, again, there's a listing there of different people, basically anybody, anyone that will listen. We also talk about public awareness activities that may be included. There's some different examples of activities, with press releases, billboards, commercials, promotional items, presentations. On these items that are printed and such, that if EAPA funds are utilized, acknowledge support of the department by the statement that is there on the screen. This project made possible in part by funding from the Iowa Department on Aging. So it is a complete delicate balance, as you may know if you've been in this field, that you need to balance the public awareness. The more public awareness you do, the more calls you will get in, which is good. But what we don't want to do, again, we have limited staff and resources, is we don't want to give people hope and raise all of this awareness if we have nobody to respond and go out and field the calls, and also to do assessments and interventions. So, if your numbers are a little bit down, do more public awareness. And as your numbers start to climb, then kind of pull back a little bit on the public awareness. So again, it's a very delicate balance. Before I get to questions, there's also on our website, if you go onto our website underneath the Elder Abuse Program, there is a state clearinghouse that I recommend that you click on, and there's related legislation, there's reports, there's national resources link, there's a state resources link, there's information on reporting abuse, neglect, or exploitation. There's also a link for reporting fraud, identity theft, scams, and other issues. This is page 43 of your manual, actually 43, 44, but we'll just say through 47. That it has a whole listing of all of this information that can be found underneath the clearinghouse. I highly encourage you to go out there and see what resources are available. I also encourage you to look at the NAPSA. This is on page 45 under National Resources. Under links, it's probably like the 6th bullet down. It says National Adult Protective Service Association. That is a membership of, it started out as adult protective service workers, and then over the years it expanded and it included the area agencies on aging and the state units on aging, and now it has grown to the point of where it has law enforcement, county attorneys, banks, community providers, and it's a very, very valuable resource. And they also have a conference once a year that I have been to a few times, and I have found very educational. So that is something to keep in mind as well. So I thank you for participating in the orientation, and if you have any questions, please